So yes, this is our fourth and final week of our Regal Partner Webinar Series. So today we are going to focus on banking and lending, one of, if not our strongest vertical, right there alongside insurance. A couple housekeeping updates for everyone. If you like what you see here, if you're unable to stay for the whole thing, please reach out to me for a deeper dive demo of the Regal solution or questions, you want to hear more case studies. My email is mandy@regal.io. We've had a great 3 weeks prior, so going over other strong verticals for us. I mentioned insurance, healthcare, local services. We do have those recorded, so if you'd like to have me send those or just want to get up to speed, I can send those out as well. Most of our registration links for upcoming events went out in the partner newsletter this week, but we are going to be in Chicago later this month. So the team will be working at the Telarus Lightning event on November 15th out in Oak Brook. And then I will be hosting a lunch and learn and then happy hour at the Avant headquarter office downtown Chicago on November 30th. So right before the holidays, if you want to meet up with us in the Midwest, then we'll be releasing our 2024 calendar here shortly. So big lead up going into channel partners in March. So can't wait to see you all there. With me today, I have Cody, another one of our sales reps who specializes and covers our banking and lending vertical. We'll hear a little bit more from him later, but let's dive in to who is Regal and what we're doing. So Regal, end-to-end contact center solution for outbound teams. Think sales teams, think that B2C, business to consumer market, where there is high intent purchasing going on. You heard some of the verticals where we really specialize in. This is not a competitive contact center tool to your traditional inbound focused customer support, customer service contact center, like your NICE, your Five9, your Genesys. Regal would actually work alongside of and pull out those outbound focus agents. They would live their day in Regal. They're doing something very different. That's totally okay. You can keep your traditional CCaaS for that inbound customer support, customer service. So these tools are working alongside of each other. Why Regal? Like, why did we create Regal? Our founders, Rebecca and Alex, actually came from a company you're probably all familiar with, Angie's List. So they ran and were in charge of the whole contact center practice over there, multi-million-dollar account, couple thousand agents. And their day-to-day, right, was a little bit different than your traditional customer service, customer support. It was very much making these outbound calls. People were coming to the website and they were asking for maybe an electrician for their home. So their agents were using traditional contact center software like a NICE inContact, Genesys, Five9, which is again aimed towards that inbound kind of contact, right? So they were getting these lists of phone numbers and just kind of saying, call them at all hours of the day, call them at 8, call them at noon, call them at 4, call them for 3 weeks in a row, just get these people on the phone. But you can imagine that's extremely difficult. The answer rate, I know how much I answer the phone and how many missed calls I get from numbers I don't know. I'm never picking up that phone number. So that's an extremely inefficient way to look at the outbound practices in a contact center. So they actually broke off and created Regal to do just that, where we focus on personalizing that touch point to get people on the phone faster. So yeah, when you think of, again, why Regal? Why am I bringing these up to my customers? Well, if your customers have an outbound team, how are they getting those people on the phone? How are they connecting with them? More importantly than that, though, how are they converting those sales? Are these actual conversations they're having, or are they just going right to voicemail? So how are we converting these into actual sales, driving revenue? It's the whole purpose of Regal. And then, is what we're doing working? So if we're adding in multi-channels to this instead of just voice, and we're looking at now using SMS and email communications, if we're branding phone numbers versus not branding the phone numbers, what's working and what's not? So the Regal team is also here to help you constantly iterate that practice and test what you're doing to make sure it's the most effective. I mean, really, first and foremost, where is Regal a fit? Does your customer have an outbound facing team? You might hear them refer to this again as a sales team, a customer facing team. So when you're going to your customers and saying, do you have any of your agents calling outbound? If the answer is yes, this is a fit for Regal. Transparently, if the answer is no, primarily people just call in and ask a bunch of questions, that inbound motion, no, that's not where you bring Regal in. So if they do have that outbound team and you want to further qualify what they're asking, so are they having difficulty getting people on the phone? Do they need, to fix or get a lift in their answer rates? That could be a big pain point. Again, do they want to start using different channels, that omni-channel touch point, where maybe not just a phone call is the best practice, but maybe sending a text, which then leads or triggers a phone call. That might be the best practice. They just need to test that out. So over here on the right, this will be available if anyone would like me to send it. These are kind of the pain points that Regal is solving once you've identified that there's an outbound team at play. This slide is busy, I know. This is the Regal way, how we would view it. End to end, the contact center solution where your outbound teams live. You can see here, we have our own dialer. We have the ability to be making the calls. So it can be the full suite. But we understand, and to be clear, you don't need to have the whole Regal suite as your starting point. We have a lot of our customers, especially in banking and lending, which Cody will get into, who start on that connect piece. This is the most important piece to the puzzle in sense of how are we getting people on the phone? So why don't we just look at, how about we take away those things that say probably spam or spam likely, right? Let's remove that spam tag. Then maybe let's add the call, the brand to the calls, right? So you'll hear a little bit later today about SoFi, a large customer of ours. They do that. If I'm on the website, popping around, looking at a couple of questions, maybe opening a bank account or looking at student loan refinancing, then I get distracted, right? I'm in my workday, so I go and go do something else. If I, within a few minutes, receive a text or a phone call with that SoFi brand, I'm more apt to pick that up because I was just on their website doing something. So that brand really resonates with me versus some random call that says spam likely that I'm not answering. So that's an extremely easy entry point for where Regal makes sense. But that's not all we do to differentiate from other people in that space today. We have the rest of these tools that we can empower the agents and give these teams. So customizing a workflow of sending a text, sending a call, sending an email notification, and then what that kind of looks like, which can be customized for every single person you're trying to connect with. That's unique to Regal. Again, adding in some of these text messaging options. You'll see over here as we get further to the right, conversational intelligence, right? Making sure that what the agent's actually doing on the phone call is effective. All the way right to the far right of testing and analyzing and providing reporting that your customers can then go straight to the CFO and say, well, here's black and white. We branded 50% of our calls, kept the other 50% how we were doing them today. Look at the differences. This is pretty black and white of how much revenue or how many more people we were able to get on the phone. So just to clarify as well, these can all come a la carte. Some are usage-based, some are per agent per month once you get into a larger suite, but you don't have to buy an all or nothing. You can start off and kind of land and expand into your customer base. So who is Regal's ICP? We've gone over it a little bit in pieces, but again, you're looking for that outbound team. So it's going to be a smaller subset of the contact center. We're looking for about 20 or more agents with a high call volume, right? They're constantly going and dialing. Cortland, looks like I have a question here. Totally fine if we want to take that now.
Yeah, sure. So John asked, can SMS text be branded?
Yes. 100%. Good question. And that's part of that workflow, right? Is to make sure that you're kind of, if you're sending those types of communication, either a call or a text, that somebody knows where it's coming from. Again, a little bit outside of IT, which I know is our normal, where we own a lot of relationships, while IT will be a part of this sales cycle, we really want to stick to like VP of sales, CRO, someone who owns a quota at the end of the year, where their initiatives are first and foremost, I need to drive X amount of revenue to hit my goals, or I need to exceed this number, and how can I do that better? So if they have a quota, this is going to really resonate. IT will come in maybe more towards the technical discovery, things like that. We'll go over the verticals a little bit deeper in just a second, but really things unique to Regal. Our sales cycle is about 30 to 45 days. So especially when you start at some of these basic practices that are really, kind of, I like to say common sense. Like, of course, branding the calls makes a ton of sense. Maybe if we're just using voice and want to add in that text, makes a ton of sense. So these are very quick turnarounds where we have maybe 1 to 2 calls and can really implement those practices in just a couple of days. So both the sales cycle and the implementation cycles with Regal are very fast when we think contact center. Think traditional CCaaS, everyone thinks 6, 8, 12 months. Our success teams have KPIs around really getting these teams up and running from an implementation standpoint, 30 days post signature. So you see that ROI pretty great. So from a consulting standpoint, from a trusted advisor standpoint, you're coming in and you're saying, hey, let's look at these practices for your outbound teams. Now you have that data within the first 30 days to go back to the CFO and say, look at what's working here. Like, this was a great investment that's paying for itself. All right. And finally, from me, again, these are our verticals where Regal shines. High intent, lots of data on the customers that they're outbound outreaching to. Today, we're going to go deeper into banking and lending. But insurance is also huge. At the end of the day, people selling insurance are essentially selling the same product. There's not that much differentiation from company to company. What makes these companies different is the customer experience. So if that agent contacts you and the 2 workflows are today, you are on AAA's website and they're perusing around. And then, over the next couple of days, you might get a lot or a few phone calls that you don't know, you're not answering that. But if AAA texts you and says, hi, this is Mandy from AAA. I saw that you were just doing XYZ, had a question on, an auto policy. Can I give you a call in 5 minutes? And then I get a call that's branded that says AAA. That workflow, I'm picking up the phone. And so high likelihood that might convert into me buying a AAA policy over someone else who that outreach wasn't the same practice. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cody. Again, Cody is our AE for banking and lending, and he's going to share with you guys some best practices in this vertical space and also a great case study that we have.
Hey gang, like Mandy said, I'm Cody. I look after all of our banking, lending, financial services customers. So this is a really awesome opportunity to tell a really great story. So what I'm going to do is just talk about, an ICP that we're working with, identify a couple of use cases that I think are easy to, talk about with your current customers. And then we'll just showcase a little bit of the real and immediate value through this story that you're seeing on the screen that our team at SoFi saw. So a little bit about SoFi, short for social finance, if you were curious. I always am about company names. They were founded in 2011. Like most good ideas in a garage at Stanford. Mike Cagney and his group of friends really wanted to start SoFi with the goal of offering better financial terms for students who were looking at current and refi of their student loans or just generating, and financing their own education. And so they've done really good. In 2021, they filed for an IPO. And then by 2022, they had a national bank charter, which was huge for their business because at that point, they didn't need to rely on third-party banks to finance and basically underwrite all of the products that they were selling. And so since then, they now have expanded to basically every offering where you can use them for your entire financial life. Things like savings and checking, credit cards, loans. They now offer credit monitoring services, investment coaching, I guess is what they're calling it. And then they're launching insurance products now as well. So they've expanded their business huge to accommodate any needs of their current customers. Some highlights about them recently, which I think are really cool. They set a record for growth every quarter, which going into the ICPs that Mandy was talking about, like we're constantly looking for companies that want to grow and that care about growing. Case in point for SoFi, I think they're adding like 700,000, maybe 800,000 members a quarter. which is huge. And all of their lending products are now 100% profitable. And so as a result, right, they're now considered a top 10 in the national banking category. And then I think CNBC just voted them the top fintech company of 2023. So, you know, kind of going into why they're a good fit for us. Case in point, like Mandy said, they have a team that are making outbound calls. They have a dedicated outbound team responsible for driving growth. In the case of SoFi and a lot of these neobanks, they can't rely on driving growth through brick and mortar locations. So their way of driving growth is through, you know, digital marketing and proactive outbound outreach. So number two, they sell high consideration products. Might be one of the most important decisions you make as a consumer in your life, right? Is a home mortgage, is financing your child's, you know, education or your education for that matter. And so that in itself makes them a really good fit for us. They are making a high volume of calls. I think they have roughly about 55 to 60 agents now. They started with 30 with us, and so they've been able to, you know, scale their team through using Regal as well. But I think most importantly, it's the only way that they can drive growth is through outbound outreach. So it's a really good fit for us. So jumping into the story that or the case study that you're seeing on the screen, we work predominantly with Kevin in the performance marketing team. So Kevin, previous to SoFi, was at Uber, right? And was in a growth role at Uber. So he already kind of inherently understood the value of human conversations as a way to improve conversions, right? And so when we saw that Kevin had left Uber and joined SoFi, we reached out. And so after Kevin arrived at SoFi, what he really realized was that the tools that he had available, I think that the support team was using Nice in Contact, already knew that that wasn't really going to be a good fit because there were three things that he was trying to do. He knew that selling a high consideration product, like you need to meet the prospect, right, in a moment where they're, like Mandy said, considering your product. So hitting them at the right time with the right message was really important in what he had done at Uber, but knew that Nice in Contact wasn't a good fit because the best that they could do, the support team could take a list and, you know, collect contact details and then send it to Kevin and his team, and they would haphazardly call folks. So as you can imagine, that's not a good system for selling a high consideration product like a very expensive loan. So instead, we started talking to Kevin. He realized that, wow, with Regal's Journey Builder and our contact center solution, that he could design logic that allowed him to prioritize conversations with very engaged folks raising their hand and, you know, expressing interest in their loans. And so not only that, but Kevin really wanted to A/B test. He didn't know the best strategy. He didn't know what would be the most effective. And with Nice, he couldn't do that as well. So, you know, going forward, they implement Regal, right? And really quickly, we drove a huge increase in their answer rate through branding calls. You're seeing on the screen there, it was about a 65-66% lift, which to him represented an additional, like, you know, 6 to 10 conversations that they were able to have. Not only that, it was really important just to show that SoFi was calling. That's a really compelling event, and fix spam to ensure that when his team was making these really important calls, that folks knew it was them calling and they didn't show up as scam or spam. Using that logic combined with branded calls at the right time, right? He actually saw a huge, pretty dramatic increase in this conversion data, right? So they were prioritizing folks that were raising their hand, and inherently they started converting more loans and started funding them at a higher rate. What was really interesting about this is through that prioritization and through a really great customer experience, the value of the actual loans increased as well, about 20 to 22% there, which obviously represented a huge incremental lift in the revenue that his team was generating and would in the future. And so, you know, the student and personal loans teams are really excited about Regal. Where we're going next what's kind of cool is anytime SoFi launches a new product, they're now getting into the insurance business. Regal is at the forefront of that launch so that these business leaders are in a position to, one, drive a strategy that aligns to customers or leads or prospects' needs. But more importantly, they're now in a position to A/B test really easily so that they can fine tune their outbound strategies and constantly convert and drive more incremental revenue. So it's been a great relationship with SoFi, and we're constantly expanding with their lines of business.
Yeah, Cody, I mean, this is a great story. This is a great customer for us. Banking and lending, as Cody can attest to, is huge, right? Banks have, I mean, loyalty from their customers is extremely important. And with a lot of options out there, how do they differentiate? But something I just want to call out from what you said was that right time to send the right message. When you think of, okay, well, why am I not just using the nice in contact, right? For outbound outreach, your traditional CCaaS tools just kind of give you the list, give you the phone number, and it's the agent's responsibility to kind of like decide how they can contact these people. So what a lot of times they end up doing is just calling. But by having a tool that allows each agent to personalize that quote unquote list and say, okay, for this subset of people or for this person, or if this action occurs on the website, I want it to send an email, send a text, trigger a call from myself. Maybe like insurance is another great example, or even banking and lending. If you have a customer, you know their birthday, maybe they're turning 40, right? And they want to look at certain different policies that are coming out. You can trigger these events in the future to say, okay, send XYZ from my bank or from my mortgage company that like reminds this person about policies that now with this upcoming birthday are something that they should really be thinking about. So it's being extremely proactive with the data that you already have and just using that effectively, which until Regal, you don't have the capabilities to do that in other contact center solutions. So that's where it really makes a lot of sense. So when you're starting to think of why Regal, when Regal, it's looking at these types with that high intent purchase where there is a lot of data and these are bigger decisions, or, you know, where on the website there's forms to fill out or questionnaires to answer, or where they're asking you for your information. If they're asking you for a phone number on the website, that means the goal, they have somebody who's dedicated to calling you.
Conversely, if I could just jump in too, super valuable when folks don't take the action, right, that you wanted them to take. So in the case of SoFi, what Kevin is now really honing in on is the folks that aren't able to complete applications. For whatever reason, they hit a blocker. And so now Kevin's team is very efficient at calling right at that moment, or a couple minutes after, right, to give a little bit of a cool down period. So as soon as these folks hit a blocker, 5 minutes goes by and they're calling out from that branded line, which, for consumers is really compelling. And it's a really personalized experience that can, ultimately win the deal just by the way that you handle and your outreach to them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point when you think like retention purposes too with other customers, or in that case, right? Somebody could not fill out the form because they're confused. Your website made it too difficult. It's not that they don't want the product, but they might not want it if they just can't figure it out. So if that agent is now alerted to say, how can we help you? It kind of takes that pressure off of like, oh, this website's too confusing. I guess I'll just go to a competitor of SoFi, right? And see if their form is easier for me to fill out.
100%. It's pretty common to collect, some pretty sensitive information like a social security number or some of your financial information directly in that form. And I think a lot of folks, are concerned about doing that. So having a rep call to collect that information is also a more trustworthy way of starting a relationship. And that's, again, really compelling for folks who are in this moment of considering a very, very important decision where service is hugely valuable.
Yeah, no, I love this story. So we'll open it up. We have just a couple minutes. If anyone has any questions for us on Regal, on SoFi, on banking and lending. All right. Well, we've covered it so well.
Wow.
If questions come up or you think of something later on, again, please feel free to reach out, to email me. If you want to go deeper into more banking and lending use cases, that's great. And awesome. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate everyone for joining. And again, we'll update you with our 2024 calendar soon.